Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 4.3b. We just had a pretty huge update for Wild Rift. Over 10 champions in total did get buffed, which means there are a few small changes here and there in terms of my tier list. I've also broken down the tiers a lot more as well, moved some champions from S plus down because they're not as broken, kind of split up the lower rankings of the tier list as well, so you all have more of an understanding of where champions are sitting right now in the current meta. If you don't know, I am top 100 at the moment in the ranked ladder for Wild Rift this season. Played over 350 games, so I have a really good understanding in terms of what champions are strong and maybe what champions are not as strong. Before we enter the tier list though, I'm going to tell you all about the giveaway that I'll be doing on this video as well. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment down below. If you do them three things, you'll be entered into the giveaway, which I'll be picking some winners at random at the end of this month, and you'll be able to win a free random skin chest, which will be completely RNG, completely random. So hopefully you get one that you like if you are the winner. Just keep an eye out for the comments and also the replies as well, because I'll be replying to the winner at the end of this month. But as I mentioned, this tier list is updated for patch 4.3b, so pretty excited for this patch because there's so many buffs that have happened this patch. I'm not going to go into like crazy amount of detail. I'm not going to do like a 40-minute video like most people do, because 40 minutes is way too long. I know you don't want to sit here for 40 minutes. We'll go through every champion. I'll tell you a little bit about them, and we'll go into obviously more detail maybe in like future shorts or future videos with some of the champions. In the Baron lane, not too much has changed, to be honest with you. There are still champions up here that are incredibly strong right now. There's been a bit of a change at the bottom with some champions moving down and me splitting up champions a lot more. But champions like Renekton are really strong in the Baron lane still. Great early game with Kraken Slayer and also the other new runes that have come in with the new rune system. Really strong early game champion, has great trading potential and is also really good during team fights. Akali obviously got a bit of a buff in the most recent patch, which means that she's going to be stronger than what she was before. She can use her first ability more often, and she can still be a great assassin in team fights. So she is incredible and really strong right now. Jax, an insane split pusher on top of Fiora as well, with Fiora getting the buff that her first ability lunge now works on towers, so she's going to be taking towers maybe quicker than Jax now, but Jax still has his auto attack reset with his second ability, which allows him to take towers very quickly. And Jax, in my opinion, still the best split pusher in the game. Really great in 1v1 duels as well, and the same with Fiora. Both these champions have the same benefits to them. They're both really good at split pushing, but also both really good during team fights as well. You know, Fiora with her ultimate is really good. Jax jumping on with the counter strike, also really good as well. So they're both really good in team fights, not just their split pushing. Aatrox got a little bit of a buff with his minion healing and also minion damage, which means you can clear the wave more if you want to. But really strong champion right now in the Baron lane and also in the jungle. Really good team fighting, good healing, good sustain, and great crowd control. So he is really good. Camille, again, another really good split pusher in the Baron lane, but she brings something a little bit different where her team fights allow her to lock down a champion with her ultimate, which makes it really difficult to play against at times. So make sure when you're playing against Camille, you be careful of her, because if she jumps on top of you, uses her ultimate, then you're going to be stuck in there for a long amount of time. On the best tank in the Baron lane by far, still really strong super tank. Even after the couple of nerfs that he received in the last few patches, he's still very strong right now. Really, you know, does a lot of damage, super tanky, and also great crowd control. Gwen, still really strong in the Baron lane as well. Still great AP champion to play if you don't want to play an assassin like Akali instead. She's a little bit stronger now in terms of her defensive stats in the early game, so she's not going to take as much damage in the early game now when using her second ability. But still, she scales once she gets 3 or 4 items. She does so much damage during team fights. Really strong. So definitely a great champion to pick up. And Garen as well. Super easy champion in the Baron lane. Maybe not the best carry potential and can be kited a little bit easier. But especially in the lower elos, Garen is insanely strong. Super easy to play. A lot of damage. Really easy build path as well. So Garen, again, another champion that is going to be staying in the S+ tier. Shen, another good alternative as a tank, to be honest with you. If Ornn is banned, then you could play someone like Shen instead. He has great split push potential with the likes of Sunfire and also his first ability now doing AoE damage. And you can join the team fights with his ultimate whenever you feel like it. So really good. Wukong, still pretty good. I have moved him down into S tier. I just don't think he has the same carry potential as the other S+ tier champions. He's still pretty easy to play. He still has great sustain. He's still really tricky to deal with as well because of his clone, and also his ultimate is great during team fights. So there are ways that on which you can carry with Wukong in the Baron lane, but I just don't think he's as strong as carryable as the other champions up in the Baron lane, but still really good. You know, S tier champions in general are still very, very strong. Gragas still really good as a tank champion in the Baron lane. You can play him full AP if you want to, but tank Gragas is the best to play in the Baron lane. A lot of sustain, a lot of great, a lot of ability haste as well, which means you can use your abilities more often. Super tanky, and also great crowd control. Darius, one of the best team fighting bruisers up in the Baron lane. Being able to use your proto belt and your hook and getting your resets off your ultimate really allows you to kind of shine during team fights, especially with your ultimate resets if you can get them off. I really are a bit more on the difficult side in terms of playing her, because you need to understand how her resets work with her first ability, but still really, really strong to play. Great, you know, team fight potential with her ultimate, and also getting resets with her first ability. If you can land your third ability and land your stun as well, she is great. Set again, another great team fight champion to play in the Baron lane. Maybe not that strong in terms of dueling, in terms of 1v1 scenarios in the Baron lane, but when he joins team fights, if he can use his ultimate on a tank and get access to backline carries, then you can do a lot of great damage. Malphite, pretty good tank as well. Really, really easy to play. People do play him AP Gragas, AP Malphite in the top lane. I wouldn't recommend it. I think full tank is the best to go. Really easy to play, not really difficult in terms of mechanics or anything like that. Just doesn't really have the same carry potential as the ones above. Riven, I think with the buffs that she received with her first ability, could definitely be a lot stronger now in this patch. I'm not too sure if she's going to be S+ tier worthy or not, but still, she's very, very strong. Does an insane amount of damage, really mobile as well, and great during team fights. Sion, again, another really strong tank in the Baron lane. He kind of becomes even tankier than Ornn, really, to be fair, with how much health that you're going to be gaining throughout the game because of his passive, and also that works really well with some items. Also, you can take towers super, super quickly with Demolish and Hullbreaker. Yone, one of the cooler champions to play in the Baron lane, one of the more unique ones in the Baron lane, because normally he's a mid lane champion, but you can play him in the Baron lane if you do have a decent matchup. But he is quite difficult to play. He is quite difficult to master. And to be honest, against some other bruisers, you might be losing trades in the Baron lane. But still, Yone as a champion overall is very, very strong. Jace, still really good, even after the changes. You know, most of them were nerfs in the jungle, but buffs in terms of, you know, solo lane and mid lane. Still really strong with first strike, with building full damage items, a lot of poke damage, and a lot of damage when you're jumping into team fights. Vladimir, I think, is pretty good. I don't think he's broken. I think there are ways in which you can shut down Vladimir, especially you know, early game champions, because Vladimir is really, really, well, I say really, really weak. He's kind of weak during the early game. I mean, he has a lot of sustain with his first ability, but I'm seeing that like new players for Vladimir don't really understand how to play him in the early game. You just need to play super passive in the early game as Vladimir. Wait until you get a few items, kind of similar to Gwen. Once you get 2 or 3 items, you become really, really strong with a lot of sustain and a lot of damage during team fights, but which is what makes him strong. But again, early game Vladimir, not as strong. Pantheon's an okay champion. He's all right. He's, you know, he has his potential of maybe getting some cheeky early game trades and maybe cheeky early game kills in the Baron lane if you can find ways of, you know, sneaking around and doing a lot of damage. But overall, not the best Baron laner. He's okay. He's not the best. Urgot is okay as well, but just loses against a lot of these bruiser matchups, especially ones that go Hullbreaker as well, because you struggle to defend against that, and you don't really do a lot of damage overall. You know, Cracker Slayer plus Brutal is a good combo for Urgot to try and get damage in the early game, but other than that, not really anything else that you can, you know, really give for Urgot in general. Volibear, pretty decent in the Baron lane, a lot better in the jungle in my opinion. He just doesn't have the trading potential in the Baron lane, and he's kind of difficult to be able to win trades against other Baron laners that can't really impact the map and can't really impact the game as much as a Baron laner, as a jungler, because of his ultimate, but still pretty decent. Kennen's decent as well, especially ranged, you know, Kennen in the early game, being able to bully out champions can be really, really good. Overall, not the best. Can be great during team fights, but if you exhaust the Kennen, then pretty much most of the damage from Kennen is just gone completely. Mundo is an okay tank. He's just on the weaker side. There's a lot better tanks like Sion, Shen, and Malphite. If you're against multiple AP champions, then I would recommend going for Dr. Mundo. If you're not against AP champions, then I wouldn't recommend to go Dr. Mundo, because Dr. Mundo does well against burst damage because he can heal it back up very quickly, but against consistent damage, he can struggle quite a bit. Teemo's okay. He has his laning phase where he can be ranged, bully out champions and do all this and all that. But when it comes to later stages of the game, most useless champion probably in the entire game. Doesn't really offer too much. His streams can just be countered by using Sweeper Lens or just using Pink Walls or just using your brain really. Doesn't do as much damage. The blind doesn't really do anything at all. And you're super squishy, so you die really, really quickly. So not that great. Singe is okay, just kind of runs around. It's just an annoyance, really, to be honest with you. Doesn't really do too much in terms of damage. Can be super tanky, can be pretty annoying to play against, but in terms of a carry, not really too strong. Olaf as well in the Baron lane, not that good. Better in the jungle, but still can work in the Baron lane. Tryndamere, Graves, and Nasus, these champions are not that great at all, especially Graves now. Graves is just not really a Baron laner anymore. I haven't seen Graves Baron lane for a long time now. He was a thing in a Baron lane before, but now he's not really a thing anymore. So to be honest, I might just remove Graves in the Baron lane completely. Tryndamere has his moments. You know, maybe you can look to try and get one kill when he's using his ultimate and trying to jump in, but can get kited really easy and doesn't really do too much in the early game. Same with Nasus, you just kind of AFK farm in the early game. You don't really do too much in the early game. If you can stack up and if you can, you know, get a few stacks with Nasus, then hey ho, you know, happy days. If not, then not really too great. And KO as well. Again, KO is the champion, even though KO has apparently the highest win rate at the moment in China. I wouldn't recommend playing KO. Melee champion until level 5, can get bullied out super easily. If you play against the KO, you can easily tower dive KO as well. There's just so many ways in which you can counter and just take advantage of someone picking KO. Now, in my opinion, it's just not worth the risk. Not worth the risk at all. Maybe D tier is a little bit harsh, but as I said, I split up the tiers a lot more. Jungle, going through them all again. Wukong jungle, a lot better than Baron lane jungle. I say a lot better. It's better than Baron lane jungle. Bit more on the weaker side in terms of jungle as well, but it's just a super easy, super sustainable jungler to play if you don't want to play like any of the assassins. Aatrox jungle, really powerful, great sustain, great crowd control, insane amount of damage. Then we go into the assassins, you know, champions like Kha'Zix and Shadow Assassin Kayn. Both these AD assassins are very strong right now. They both offer completely different things. You know, Kayn could be great AoE damage and you could pick off enemies. We could be able to go through walls. Kha'Zix with his isolation damage is absolutely incredible, really strong. Both these champions are really good right now. Rhino as well in the jungle, great as an assassin, great during team fights as well. Evelyn with her invisibility can definitely surprise a few people and do a lot of damage. Gragas jungle is still really good, and the same with Yone as well. Gragas jungle with his crowd control and his insane amount of damage, and Yone as well can also be very strong. Lee Sin not as powerful as what he once was. The thing is with Lee Sin is that he can't really take advantage of his early game power that he gets to, and he can be a little bit difficult to make plays because with Lee Sin you have to dash into the back line to try and kick someone back into your team, but at the same time it can be a little bit difficult because most of the time they're going to have ways to escape anyway, so it's hard to make plays with Lee Sin, but still really good early game jungler, really good for trying to make plays. Volibear jungle, still really good, great ultimate as well to be able to tower dive early on if you want to go for that. Super tanky, a lot of damage, great champion. Zed as an AD assassin in the jungle can also be very good. Not as strong as champions like Kayn and Kha'Zix, for example, but you can still make Zed jungle work because you can just farm up, do a lot of damage. Rhythm, even though they did nerf her damage in the jungle, I still think she's going to be strong in the jungle because of her mobility and also her first ability getting a little bit more damage, so you can use your abilities more often now to actually clear the jungle rather than her passive. So I think she'll still be fine. I really a bit more on the difficult side, same with the Baron lane, but still really good in the jungle, can still make a lot of plays with her ganks. Vi, great lockdown potential, one of the most underrated I think junglers in general. Her lockdown with her ultimate super strong, she's super tanky, she can also do a lot of damage, so she's great overall. Xin Zhao as well, really great tank kind of bruiser to play in the Baron lane, really strong in terms of being able to pick champions off, using your ultimate to knock everyone else away and isolating yourself against an enemy champion like an ADC can be very powerful, and you can do a lot of damage. You have great amount of crowd control. You could definitely help your team out a lot with that one. Echo with the burst damage that Echo has is very strong, also a great amount of crowd control, and also good in terms of tower diving as well, and just diving champions in general, because his ultimate allows him to go back in time technically and just heal up all of his HP, so he can dive into fights, do a lot of damage, use his ultimate and jump out of fights. So pretty safe assassin to play. Doesn't do as much in terms of burst damage compared to the other assassins, but he's a bit more on the safer side because you can use your ultimate, use your second ability to get the healing, get the shielding. Fiora jungle still really good as well. If you can farm up, get to a few items, she could be really good during team fights. Same with Shyvana, not really as strong in terms of being able to, you know, power farm or anything anymore, because power farming is not really the most efficient way to play jungle now. But still could be really good if you can get a few objectives, get the stacks on her passive, get a few of her abilities evolved, and she can be very good. Jarvan, I think, is going to be incredible this patch because of the, you know, the new way that his ultimate is going to work. It's going to be great. I think it's going to have great success with Jarvan, whether you're playing Bruiser, Tank Jarvan. I think overall it's going to be a great change for him. I think it's going to be very, very good. Ross Kane, more Bruiser. Red Kane, still going to be very strong this patch. Obviously, Shadow Assassin is a lot stronger, but Ross Kane is still a good choice if you want a different alternative. Nunu's still a really good tank jungler to play, really good for zoning control and just being able to control team fights in general. Great at ganking, great at being able to tower dive, can heal up a lot with his first ability. Really good overall. Nautilus, AP Nautilus is still pretty good in the jungle. You still have great one-shot potential, a lot of great crowd control and a lot of damage. Olaf as well, still pretty good in the jungle. Twitch as well, with his damage, his AP damage can be really, really scary. I think Twitch can easily be countered in the jungle, but a lot of people don't know how to play against Twitch. If you're playing against the Twitch, be careful at level 2 because he's going to look for a cheeky level 2 gank, but most people don't understand that. Most people, the amount of people I see die to a Twitch gank at level 2 because they have no idea of how the champion works, then Twitch just snowballs the game. If he can get a few early kills, he's just going to snowball the game. He doesn't even need to farm at all. He just snowballs the game in terms of getting kills early on with his invisibility. Jace as well, even though they nerfed a bit of damage in the jungle, I still think Jace is going to be fine in the jungle overall. I think he's going to still be pretty good. Fizz could be pretty good in the jungle as well. Great one-shot potential, really good mobility, really good in terms of being able to, you know, one-shot and trying to damage, and also his her ultimate could be, is it he or her? I can't remember if Fizz is a he or she. I can't remember. Anyway, Fizz in general just does a lot of damage, and it's pretty tricky to kill at the same time. Gwen jungle doesn't clear the jungle as quick as before, but still could be pretty good. If you farm up to 2 or 3 items, Gwen as a champion overall is still really good. Just doesn't clear the jungle as quickly. Shen jungle, less of a carry, more of a supportive style jungler, because you can use your ultimate to try and impact a lane, and you can just AFK farm throughout the whole game if you really want to. Rammus could be pretty good, isn't really good against every single champion in every scenario, but still could be pretty good even after the nerfs that Rammus received. Still really good at early ganking with the Torn, a lot of movement speed with his first ability, so still could be pretty good. Couple of other, you know, more assassin, I guess, orientated junglers, you know, champions like Rengar, for example, that has great one-shot potential, but he just doesn't have the same amount of mobility and the same amount of plays that someone like a Kha'Zix and a Kayn does. You know, someone like Kha'Zix and Kayn, they can jump around a lot, they can use their abilities a lot, and they can jump in and out of team fights very quickly. Rengar is like, you use your ultimate, you jump in, and that's it. You know, once you've jumped in, you've jumped in. You can kill someone, but then you could probably die. Someone like Kha'Zix can jump in, get a kill, jump out. Kayn can jump in, get a kill, use his ultimate, use his third ability, get out. Kind of see how that works out. So like Rengar's like jump in and that's it. You don't really have any way of escaping. Other champions have that kind of flexibility in a way. Grace jungle can still work pretty well. I think after buffs he can still work okay, but not really too great. Pantheon as well. First strike Pantheon jungle could be really good for early ganks and really good with his ultimate if you can get the plays there. Camille's jungle clear speed is just not as strong as what it was before. I think as a champion, Camille can still be very strong in the jungle with great lockdown potential, but overall the champion is just not as strong in the jungle as what it is in other roles. Lilia jungle is kind of just nowhere in the meta right now. I don't think I've seen Lilia in the jungle for a long time, and it's just because Lilia doesn't really work too well against these assassins. Lilia wants these prolonged team fights to be able to run around, use her abilities, and deal a lot of damage, and also use her ultimate. But the problem is nowadays is that team fights are ending in like 5 seconds because there's so many assassins right now. So pretty difficult to play Lilia. Kind of same with Morgana, you know, wants to prolong team fights, wants to be able to catch someone out with bindings, etc. But when there's so many assassins, really difficult to play against. Mundo doesn't really work in the jungle. Probably better in the Baron lane, but you can make it work in the jungle if you want to. It's just his kit doesn't really work too well. towards the jungle. Darius with phase rush could be very good in the jungle, with getting hooks and getting abilities. And then you have the C tier with champions like, Master Yi, Warwick, Tryndamere, Amumu. All these champions can have their benefits, can be pretty good in certain scenarios. Amumu could be pretty good for team fights if you can get the right plays off. Master Yi, if he gets a few early kills, and he could definitely 1v9 a game. But overall, these champions are mainly for lower elos, they could probably work, but as you get higher, it becomes more and more difficult. In the mid lane, again, a few small changes here and there. Ahri is still really good in the mid lane. Really easy to play, great lockdown, great damage overall. Diana as an assassin is still really good in the mid lane as well. Still really good, you can still make a lot of plays. Yone mid lane, still his best role. Really strong in the mid lane, can trade really well, has his knock-ups with his first ability. You could use your third ability to basically jump in, take a trade, and jump out again. There's so many ways with Yone in which he can benefit a lot with playing mid lane. Akali, buffed, still S+ tier, still the same as what she was before. Great assassin to play, super mobile, very difficult to kill. Vex and Zoe, two of the best mages in the mid lane by far. I think Ahri is close behind them, but Vex with her crowd control and the same burst damage is really, really good. And Zoe's just a super safe mage to play. You land your bubble, you use your first ability, you use your ultimate to jump into the fight, and then you jump away and you exit the fight basically. So really great mages to play. Definitely try out these two mages, Vex and Zoe, they're both really good. Zed as well, really strong as an assassin in the mid lane. Definitely if you can get level 5 as well, it can be very, very good. Irelia, as I mentioned before already, bit of a more difficult champion to play, but can still work. Katarina with her resets could be very good, but I'm seeing Katarinas being played and being picked when you're against 5 crowd control champions, which is not the way to go, so you definitely don't want to do that. Ziggs, really good mage, really good champion that you could just sit back, throw out your abilities and do a lot of damage. Twisted Fate, I've seen a new build with Twisted Fate where Nash's 2 for Lich Bane, which is kind of interesting, using first strike, so maybe I have to give that a try. But yeah, Twisted Fate in general, great run with potential with his ultimate. You definitely look to make an impact on the rest of the map. Still really good champion to play. Yasuo, as long as you don't get a 0-10 Yasuo on your team, the champion is very strong and can be very impactful. Orianna, another great, control mage, kind of same with Ziggs in a way. A lot of great damage and a lot of great teamfight potential. Gragas with his one-shot potential mid lane can also be very good. Same with Jace as well, still really good in the mid lane. Lucian as well, also pretty nice in the mid lane. Maybe not as strong as what he was before. With how many of these assassins and mages are strong in the mid lane. If you have the right matchup, then Lucian can work really well. If you're against melee champions, for example, you could do really well in the mid lane. Swain in the mid lane, still pretty good. A lot of sustain, a lot of great damage, and also a lot of crowd control as well that you can offer. So the sustain is the big thing with his ultimate. Kai'Sa, AP Kai'Sa mid lane, still really good. A lot of great poke damage overall. Corki mid lane can still work, maybe not as strong as before, but Corki's still okay and can still work. Castlin is a bit of a hit and miss in my opinion. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. And the thing is with Castlin is, again, it's a champion that can get bullied out in the early game, kind of similar to KO in a way. But Castlin has a bajillion flashes. He has 20 million flashes that he can use to jump around the team fight as much as he can, and if he does get fed, then he is insanely strong. I don't think he's S+ tier, but he is very strong. Once he gets level 5, he's super safe to play and really, really fun to play as well. Karma, I think after the buff she could be okay. Obviously she's fallen out a little bit. She's obviously moved from S+ tier from the tier list I did 2 patches ago. She's not as strong as what she was in the mid lane because her damage potential is just not there anymore, and she just kind of gets outfarmed by some of these other AP mages. But I think after the changes now she'll be fairly decent with the shield and the first ability change. Veigar, great zoning control, great one-shot potential with his ultimate, can be very good. Lux in the mid lane, still very good with first strike as well. Vladimir with phase rush, as I mentioned in the Baron lane. Vladimir just in general as a champion, a lot of great sustain, a lot of damage, a lot of great team fight potential, so can still be really good. Kennen can work as a ranged champion, can be pretty good. Great team fight potential with his ultimates. But again, can be countered by exhaust, so maybe not as strong. Fizz could be pretty good. You can jump around, try and make plays, but I just don't think Fizz is going to be as good as other assassins. Same with these other assassins mid. Champs like Fizz, Echo, Pyke as well. I just think the assassins above are just a lot better in my opinion. Like Kassadin, Zed, all these assassins, Diana, Yone as well. I just think they offer a lot more than these other assassins. But champs like Fizz can still work. Echo can still work if you can dash in and ulti away. Akshan after the buffs maybe might be a little bit stronger, but I just don't think Akshan will really hit the mark in terms of being able to just provide a lot during team fights, because Akshan as a champion doesn't really do that much damage. The way Akshan's win games is by roaming with his invisibility, but again, kind of difficult to make plays right now. Pike mid maybe not as strong as what it was before, because you do less damage to minions, but you're going to have a lot better roaming potential now, because you have a lot of damage with your first ability and also your third ability. So there could be a way there in which you can play like roaming Pike mid and make it work. Annie after the rework, I think Annie is definitely going to be a lot stronger now. She definitely has a lot more playmaking potential, and you can crowd control enemies for a lot longer time now. You know, using your ultimate to stun a champion can be very, very good, and then knocking them up again afterwards. I think Annie overall doesn't sneak into the S tier in my opinion, and does move up a tier, but I don't think she's going to be like, she's not like broken for example. She's not like absolutely insane. She's decent, she can work, she's not as strong. Galio mid can still work if you play him as a mage. You still have a lot of great one-shot potential if you want to go for that route. These champions here are just not that great. You know, Aurelion Sol is just not that good at all at the moment. I'm surprised that Aurelion Sol doesn't get buffed, to be fair. Aurelion Sol is really, really weak right now. Brand again in the mid lane, it just gets countered really easily by assassins. You could get jumped on really easy by assassins. You get outclassed by other mages. Just not that good. Singe mid, if you can make it work, you can make it work. I don't think it's that great. Seraphine mid is okay, does a little bit damage, not that great. Morgana mid as well, not that good. And then you have Kayle mid lane, which to be fair, Kayle maybe should move up into C tier, but yeah, it's Kayle. It's Kayle. That's all I really need to say about that. Duo lane, there's been some movements again in the duo lane, you know, some champions moving here and there, and again I'm trying to split up the tiers a lot more to kind of give you all more of an understanding in terms of the champions, and moving champions down to D tier that you should just never play at all. Like Senna, for example, farming Senna just doesn't work, you should never play it. But S plus tier, Tristana, great range, great damage potential, insane attack speeds. The champion has pretty much everything. Kai'Sa, whether you play her AP or AD, both of them still work. AP is obviously going to be a lot better, but AD Kai'Sa still works if you want to go down that route, if you really want to. But great poke with the AP build, great mobility, great amount of burst damage. Just overall as a champion, Kai'Sa is very strong. Ezreal, the safest ADC to play right now in the duo lane. Maybe you're not going to do as much damage with Ezreal, because a lot of his damage is dependent on his abilities and doing damage with his abilities, and maybe you don't hit your abilities. But overall, super safe champion to play. All you need to do is practice for a few games and you could be really great. Jhin as well, really, really strong with either First Strike or Fleet Footwork. Either one of them two runes will work great. First Strike if you have more of a free lane to be able to walk up and auto attack, but most of the time Fleet Footwork is probably going to be your better option for more sustain during the lane phase. Vayne as well, late game beast. If you can survive the early game, get a few items with Vayne, she becomes an absolute monster in the late game. Xayah with her feathers can be very strong. You can get a lot of roots and deal a lot of damage with Xayah. You can play a lot of front to back team fights, which should be very, very strong. Varus as well with his ultimate, great lockdown potential, has good poking damage, has good auto attack damage in general. Just really, really strong ADC to play. Caitlyn with her range, she can really bully out dual lane carries down in the bot lane. So she's going to be very, very strong. Lucian kind of struggles a little bit because he's a low range ADC, but he does have a lot of mobility. You can get a lot of mobility with building items like Navori Quick Blaze. You have Cracker Slayer and Brutal for the early game, where you can look to dash in and do a lot of damage, but you kind of have to have communication with your ADC to be with your support, sorry, to be able to understand when Lucian's going to dash in and when not to dash in. Corki's still pretty good, not as strong as maybe what I first thought, with like Corki being S plus tier, but can still work out. Zeri, pretty difficult champion to play because your auto attacks are skill shots and can be blocked by like minions, etc. But if you can get to a team fight with Zeri, use her ultimate, she can be very good. I have dropped some champions down into A tier, which are a bit more like difficult champions to play. Champions like Draven and Samira, both these champions are very difficult to play and they're still strong. They can still work. They're just very difficult to play, and I wouldn't really recommend them. I would say in terms of damage potential and carry potential, they're probably S tier, but in terms of difficulty and how easy they are to play, they're probably like B or C. So that's why I put them in like A tier. Jinx as well, it's like, with Jinx, if you have an enchanter support, then great, you can make her work. But if she doesn't have an enchanter support, she's definitely a lot more on the weaker side. So again, I've kind of evened her out, which is like, she's A tier because she can work, she can go in S tier, but she can also be a B tier champion as she doesn't have the right support with her. Ashe is okay, has a lot of crowd control, doesn't really do that much damage. Miss Fortune, after changes, I'm actually excited to play her. I've kept her in B for now because I'm not really too sure how her damage potential is going to be, but I think she can maybe sneak into A tier. I have to test her out, see what she's like. Neela, don't really recommend the champion at all. She just gets bullied out really, really easily during the laning phase. You can maybe make her work. I've seen like Neela work with some enchanters like Soraka and Yumi, where you can dash in and deal damage freely, but if you don't have any of them supports, then she's going to be a little bit more difficult. Maybe I should move Neela up into A tier actually. Not too sure. Twitch in the dual lane just isn't as good as the jungle. You can still make it work by going AD or AP Twitch in the dual lane, but just doesn't work. Akshan in the dual lane, again, already a champion that I recommend in the dual lane, a lot stronger in the mid lane, and farming Senna just isn't that great. And finally, we have the support. You know, the same enchanters are still sitting S+ tier. I did do a video before where we had the hotfix for Soraka and Lux, and I moved them both down to S tier, but I'll move them back up both back up into S+ tier. I think both these champions are still incredibly strong. Lux still does a crazy amount of damage, and her shielding is still insanely strong in general. Soraka with her healing, she's not as strong as what she was before in terms of her healing, but still, she's a champion that just carries fights with her healing. Like her, every time I play against the Soraka, this champion just it just does too much, just does way too much, and it's really disgusting what Soraka can do in terms of her healing. So she is still, you know, going to sit up in the S+ tier. Same with champions like Yumi. You can make her work, especially in duo queue. She's still a really strong support to play, where you can let her just sit on top of your Fedis member and just, you know, basically let them carry and help them carry the fights. Same with Lulu as well. Her shielding, her ultimate allows you to carry team fights pretty easily. Glacial Augment obviously got nerfed, but I don't think this really affects these supports, to be honest with you. I think these supports are going to be completely fine. I think Thresh is one of the most underrated supports right now to play in the dual lane. I think he's super strong. I think he's really fun to play, and also he has just great potential overall. Pyke as well, you know, is going to be very good in this patch with the buffs that he received. He's going to be roaming around. He's going to be doing a lot more damage. He's going to be very scary this patch, so definitely keep an eye out for Pyke. Alistar's still really good as a tank with champions like Nautilus. You know, these two tanks are going to be very strong. Alistar with his combos, really nice. Nautilus with his lockdown is going to be really good. Senna, if you want to play more of a carry support in the bot lane, is still going to be very strong. Leona as a tank, still really good, great lockdown potential. What I'm realizing with Leona is that she's super tanky as well. Like, the amount of resistance and tankiness you get from Leona is just out of this world, like absolutely crazy. Janna with Glacial Augment, low-key really strong, really great right now. Rakan's still really good, and obviously we have Nami and Karma, which Nami and Karma are not going to be as strong as these other enchanter supports, but they can still work. I'm curious to see what Karma's damage and her shielding is going to do with her. Again, I kept her in S tier because I think that she's not going to be S+ tier because these other enchanters are just way too strong right now. Then we move on to the A tier. Most of these champions will work, but they might not just offer as much as, you know, other champions in general. You know, Galio can work pretty well with his lockdown and can be okay. Ornn can work pretty well. I think Ornn support is actually pretty damn good. You can get a lot of tank stats. You can do a lot for your team. Sona, if you can scale into late game, then it's good. You just get into that point, which is a bit of a problem. Ashe as the carry support can be pretty decent with her lockdown and crowd control. Gragas with his playmaking potential as well can also be very good. Braum is just awful right now. I wouldn't really recommend to play Braum at all. You could do well if you're playing against a lot of bruisers, and if you're playing like this front to back team fight where you can just pop your shield and proc your passive a lot. But he doesn't have Font to Life anymore. Well, he does, but as a minor rune. He doesn't really have a main rune to run anymore because Glacial Augment's not that great, neither is Aftershock. So he's kind of down a keystone before the game even starts. And yeah, just doesn't really carry too much. Blitzcrank, you can make it work with Glacial Augment. If you can land hooks, it could be great. Seraphine could be okay as well. And then Set and Morgana are more of the unique supports to play down in the dual lane. But that's pretty much it. That actually lasted a bit longer than what I thought it would be. But that's pretty much it for the tier list for patch 4.3b. As I mentioned, there's not that many champions in S+ tier. There is some in terms like Baron and Jungle. But I've definitely looked to try and whittle it down a little bit more in terms of like not putting as many champions in the S+ tier just because I think they're really strong. The champions in the S+ tier right now are the champions that are incredibly strong. I think they're the strongest champions in the game. You should definitely, if you're going into a game of Wild Rift, then you should definitely recommend playing one of these champions in the S plus tier. I haven't just put them in the S plus tier for no reason. They're in there for a reason, obviously. And then you have, you know, champions down in the D and C tier, which obviously they can work, but they're just not as great as other champions. But yeah, if you don't know already, obviously this is my website, Wild Rift Fire. I do all the builds and everything on this website. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link down in the description. You can check out the website, check out all the best builds for all the champions. And again, if you have any recommendations, any comments or anything like that about the tier list, please leave them down below in the comments. Obviously, leaving your comments means you enter the giveaway. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below to enter in the giveaway. So hopefully you enjoy the new patch. Take care, and I'll see you in the next wild video. Peace.